Welcome back. You're watching the Monday Report. We are live from the Greenhouse Mall. And of course, we're taking a look, or our discussion today is on what the government says, that we are living in a resilient economy. But we're seeing a lot of job cuts, especially in the private sector. What is really going on? And this is what some of you are saying on social media using the hashtag Monday Report. Frank Wesh says, digitization in the banking sector has just redistributed jobs. Jobs that have been affected are repetitive jobs such as cashiering. Since cash is still king, these jobs have moved to partnerships such as agents. Sharp banks are redeploying the tellers to tasks such as analysis. And someone here, Job Kolondo, says, this sounds like on a lighter note, in Kenya, jobs are always there till you graduate, then they all disappear. That's what Job had to say. What do you have to say? 22423 is the SMS line, and the hashtag is Monday Report. Let's get two more questions in from our audience. We'll start with you. Please start by giving us your name.
Okay, how are you? My name is Faith Tuko from the Technical University of Kenya. The issue of employees being laid off to the in this harsh economy is inevitable, guys. So my question is to the I'm calling out to the government. What are they going to do to these people after they are being laid off? Are they going to be left? Because most of the people who are going to be laid off to this economy are youths. I would call to
okay. You also had a question on manufacturing. Please go ahead and ask it.
So the challenges, what are I'm going to pose the question to the head of
the
manufacturing.
The Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Go ahead.
So what are the challenges facing manufacturing that is going to lead to the laying off of the employees?
Thank you. Thank you so much. You'll note that question. Pona Mushai, let's get another one here briefly, please, in the interest of time. Introduce yourself.
I'm Tinega Damasin from National Youth Council and the Director of Youth Empowerment Solution Initiative. My question is, actually mine is a concern. Like the Kenyan youths we have a very bright young generation that are qualified. Since now the government is losing, the private sector and the government is losing employment to the young people, or they don't have space for them. Why don't we create space to the neighboring or joint block that we have, like East Africa? The other time we were doing something like young exchange workers, East Africa. The government did it in 5 countries. But unfortunately, it ended up, I think Dr. has a know-how about it. It ended up falling down.
So you did not see the fruits?
It did not see the fruit.
Okay.
Secondly, we have the problem here again falls on honesty. Kenyans, we are not honest, because if we have the KRA consuming for the last few years 500 billion, within the tax collection, it has just got lost within something. The money that can run our school for 10 years can run 47 counties in a year. If this money is pumped in the economy to run the youth affair, trust me, we could not be having this problem. So we are not honest ourselves. So the problem lies on honesty.
Okay, to bring up an honesty issue, one last one. This gentleman used to work for a company that folded up. It's no longer there. What happened? Briefly tell us that experience, tafadhali.
Utaniruhusu nitumie Kiswahili.
Endelea tafadhali.
Kwa majina naitwa Dennis Mbuvi, nimetoka Embu. Nilikuwa nafanyia kampuni ya kupika keki. Pale kulikuwa na ushindani mkali, na pia zile vitu tulikuwa tunatumia kupika zilikuwa haziko zile to that standard yenye inafaa. So unapata tukienda soko zinaharibika na soko inakuwa iko chini sana. Tukakuja tukapata taabu na kulipa wafanyikazi. Ilinifikia mahali nikapoteza kazi. Tukuwa na wenzangu 3. Juu ya ile kuwa mnakaa miezi miwili hamjalipwa, ilikuwa ni ngumu sana.
Okay. Yeah. Asante sana. Just explaining an experience of someone who recently lost a job and what they had to go through. Mushai, let's start with you. Challenges in manufacturing. I think you touched on them briefly, but I can give you a chance to elaborate further.
Yeah, I think in one word, that was Faith's question, and a good question at that. What ails manufacturing a lot is demand. Because manufacturers, when somebody sets up a factory, and is going to produce different things. They want to produce as much as possible, as much as they can sell. And that depends on how many people want to buy what they are making. Sometimes they have issues, like Dennis has told us the unfortunate story of quality. So you've got to be able to produce quality that the market wants. If you don't make something the market wants, you'll find it difficult to survive in the marketplace. Demand comes both from your local market and also from exports. And I think we talked before about the challenge of if there is unfair competition coming in. One of the good wins we've had, for instance, this year in, say, the last 18 months or 12 months in Kenya is the fight against counterfeits. Because sometimes you're competing against, your genuine competitor, but sometimes you're competing against yourself because it's a product with your name, but it's not you who made it. Or somebody who is not paying taxes. I think somebody's mentioned KRA. If somebody's not paying the same taxes and duties that you're paying, then that's unfair competition. But underlying that economy, there needs to be some demand. There needs to be something positive in the market that people are starting to buy, whether it is houses, whether it is even shoes, that people go out on Saturday to buy new shoes. If people are not going out to buy new shoes, if you make shoes, you've got a problem there. But fundamentally, that tells us that if we're going to make a big change, because we want to do with the demand and the requirements that we have for jobs, we need a huge change. We need to think about exports.
What do you say to those who feel that it is too late for the manufacturing sector in this country at the rate at which we are going?
I would disagree with that. It's never, and at least now it is not too late. The opportunities are still there.
Even with Ethiopia just next door, with China dominating the global economy.
Yes, I mean,
Kenya
Ethiopia
still has a fighting chance.
Yes, because if we take places like China, their wage bill is rising much higher, although their productivity is also high. If you take places like Ethiopia, they are growing faster than us, but they are still quite a distance behind us in terms of the manufacturing capability that they have in place. So we have quite a lot that we can do here. In fact, for us, I would say we haven't even quite started, because currently what you're manufacturing, you find is, say, you're making shoes, or you're making toothpaste, or you're making what are the other things? We pack chemicals, etc. When you're really in manufacturing, you make the machine that makes shoes. That's when you're really manufacturing. That's because you're now in the real industrial age. You're making machines that people use to make other things. And we still have that opportunity, because the whole of Africa is going to be demanding these things as well. So if people want to pack tomato sauce in the Congo, they should be able to come to Nairobi and find somebody who makes machines for packing tomato sauce and sealing it all together. So we still have quite a way to go in manufacturing, not just the first level of manufacturing that we are doing. And that, again, is about export markets. You've got to think about, we have a market here in Kenya, maybe it's, what's our GDP now, about 300 billion or something in US. You've got markets like the US. We have AGOA, we have duty-free access to the US, which is a $40 trillion market. Huge market. If you made one thing and got 0.1% of that market,
we'd be talking a different story here today.
A different story.
Let me allow Grace to come in. You can respond to any of the questions that have been asked. Go ahead.
Yes, I'll respond very quickly because of time. Indeed, FKE did a skill survey, and that skill brought a report that showed the skill mismatch that we have, or the skill gaps that we have in Kenya. So I would encourage you maybe to get hold of that report and see how we can reskill ourselves. Our youth need to know how to reskill themselves, because the future of work demands efficiency. It demands top-notch service. I'm sure most of you also want that for yourselves, isn't it? And that's why things like M-Pesa have taken they've really hit, so to speak, in the market, because you want money, you can get it now. Even at midnight, you can get money. How? Because you only need to get in touch with somebody who has M-Pesa. In that way that we thought about M-Pesa, what can we think about our marketplace? What can we think that today, if I feel like a hamburger now, you can actually provide it? And that's why you're seeing there's a lot of online opportunities where people are trading online that we do not need to be physically there. My brother has asked about the Employment Act and the provisions of the protection that cushions employees. And I want to confirm to you that many employers indeed do have insurance, but over and above insurance, redundancy is not just a process that is not rethought by the employer. An employer really thinks hard before he lays off employees, because it's a costly affair. If you look at the law, it says that you must be paid severance pay, and severance pay is 15 days pay, and that is the minimum according to the law for every year worked. So that's not an amount, especially if you're laying off 300 workers, 200 workers, that's not an amount that is easy for the employer. And most employers hate redundancies because, number one, they're losing very loyal staff. They're losing people whom they've trained and invested in. So it is not in any imagination a cheap process. It's usually caused by financial constraints where a company is shutting down, like you've had the testimony of that gentleman, where things are not working and an employer must lay off. So the law provides for severance pay, and most employers do pay. But over and above severance pay, there's the notice pay, there's the leave days, there's the other benefits that you get because you're an employee. And an employer has to forethink this cost upfront before they declare the redundancies. And the period between declaring that there's an intention to lay off and the actual point of layoff is usually between 30 and 90 days. So it's about between 2 and 3 months, because they have to indicate to the Ministry of Labor that we're going to declare redundancies, inform you within a 30-day notice. After that, then issue you with a letter informing you that they're going to lay you off. The law is very clear that that notice to you should also be 30 days, or they pay you in lieu of notice. So all these sums actually come to a pretty sum.
Okay.
So just to confirm to you that that amount is actually usually paid, and employers really prepare for it.
Although I must say, a lot of the feedback we got when we put out our notice about this topic was that people were saying they still have not received their dues, even years after. We'd invited some of them to the program here today, but they did not come. But do you think, on the same note, should government intervene where companies that had a large number of employees have threatened to downsize? In America, we've seen President Trump actually speaking to factory owners and telling them, what do you need to stay open? Is that something that should be thought about in Kenya, briefly?
In Kenya, perhaps it could be thought about, but I think not at the juncture when a company is collapsing and declaring redundancies. Because what capacity can you give to a company that is shutting down, or a company that is collapsing because of the weight of the maybe wage cost and so on and so forth? So it's hard to give those kind of last-minute interventions, especially in this developing country of ours.
Okay.
But we need to find ways how to reskill. We need to find ways how to re-engineer ourselves into a workforce that our economy needs.
Fair enough.
If we are not able to match our skill with the needs of the market, even as manufacturing put up structures and perhaps machines, can we operate those machines? You'll find us importing labor to operate the machines that we are creating to increase our employability.
Fair
so
enough.
I think we really need to look at a lot of things.
I know you had some more points. I'll come back to you and give you a chance to do those, because I want to get in 3 more questions and then give each of the panelists a chance to respond to them.
Okay.
We also have with us here a gentleman by the name of Isaac Kandabwa. He's the KOTU Executive Board Member and General Secretary of Kenya National Private Security Workers Union. I want to talk to him a little bit about the security sector. In Nairobi, we are told that the security sector hires possibly the largest number of employees. How is their job security, and what sort of complaints does he normally receive? And that's what I want to get from him right now. Kwa ufupi tafadhali Bwana Ndabwa.
Nitaongea lugha ya Kiswahili kwa sababu members wangu nataka wasikie. Nataka nishukuru wale panelists ambao wameongea. Lakini ningependa pia nikuse kidogo kuhusu mambo ya masuala ambao umeuliza wale wa mbele. Mimi shida niko naye sana ni vile mwenzangu amesema mambo ya planning. Kuna serious problem na mambo ya planning by the government. tunakimbia mambo ya haraka haraka ila ambayo huwezi kusustain hata mpango za serikali. Kwa mfano, wakati nilikuwa primary school niliambiwa kwamba economy ya Kenya, the heartbeat ni mambo ya farming. Na kama heartbeat ya Kenya ni mambo ya farming, how come Kenyan government can purport to import maize from Uganda? What is the difference between Uganda and Kenya? Inamaanisha kwamba serikali imewaachilia wakulima wa wapi? Wa Kenya. Lakini Uganda wanapatiwa incentives in terms of mambo input, farm input. Hakuna haja ya mkulima tuseme kule Western mahali natoka analima, anainvest kwa shamba mambo ya mahindi, alafu end of the day anauza shilingi 1,800. Alafu kesho tunaambiwa kwamba wanataka kuimport same maize from Uganda kwa shilingi 3,600.
Okay.
So that is the first thing ningependa kusema. Pili, nataka niulize legal officer of FKE. Mambo mengine tunadanganya. Serikali ndio yenye policy na serikali lazima i-cushion its what? Workers or employees. Now, nataka nikuulize katika sekta yangu ya private security, ambayo vile mmesikia kwamba Nairobi peke yake ni 350,000. Minister anatangaza mambo ya minimum wage ambayo ni 15,000. Mei anatangaza mwezi wa Mei. Akitangaza inaenda mpaka December au gazeti. Wale employees nao wanafanya nini? Wana survive. Minister anasema kwamba ni lazima minimum wage ikuwe 15,000. The same government inachukua employee inachukua contract katika Supreme Court, wanapea yule mtu ambaye analipa shilingi 7,000.
Those are very strong allegations to make. You have proof about that?
I'm having proof. Because I'm talking about Supreme Court. The person who is actually given the contract is paying it below.
Okay, you would need to come with documentation, something to say that on national TV.
Okay. So let me now avoid it.
But please stick to the question.
Yes. So what I'm saying, the government must not only talk about policies, but it must again make sure it is enforcing the same what? Policies. For example, my cans in Kangware, in Shandi Mabatis, they pay 6,000. And according to the government research, it is 1,500, surely. If you go to Kangware or Kebera, can you get a house of what? 1,500. It's not there. Some of them go for almost 7 months without being paid salary. And the person who is supposed to enforce the minimum wage to protect the workers is the same government.
Good.
So what I'm saying...
I think you've given her 4 questions already. Last one, please.
Last one?
Yes.
Last one, we had a lot of challenges with the private security industry. But we made a lot of noise. And now the government has come up with what we call regulations. Private Security Regulation Authority, which is led by Fazil Mohammed. And we hope now if the authority comes up with the regulations, the government is going to do what? To enforce it to the benefit of what? The sector.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Asante sana. As you mull over those points, let's get one last question here. Please begin by introducing yourself.
My name is Effie Ochago. I'm a student, and my question goes to Dr. Awiti. My question, mine is a request for you to maybe give us a picture of what organizations are going to look like maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, and with the coming of the 5G technology.
What will organizations look like in the next 5 to 10 years as digitization continues to gain steam? So I think we start with you, and as you respond to him, you also give us your last comment, please.
Thank you. So with regard to the concerns that you've had, let me also say that there's a difference between private sector and what government can do, and the level of interference that government can have in private sector. What I understand you to say is that government should have policies that encourage enterprise. And that is something that FKE has been advocating for years, that we need policy that changes the environment of work, that makes running businesses very effective, that makes running businesses productive, that makes running businesses profitable. So if we have maybe policies that hinder enterprise growth, then it is a big problem. When I talked about redundancies, as you correctly said, that what can government do? In terms of private enterprise, policies cannot be developed at the point you're being sent home. You get what I mean? Even if the government was to change the law today and say that we are now going to change this aspect, the people who have been declared redundant now, before policy becomes effective in terms of law and becomes effective through parliament, there are so many machineries. So it will not be an instant solution. That solution, and FKE has been sharing this and preaching this for the past 5 years, that we need to change how we are doing business. Businesses need to be productive. They need to expand. And the sermon, so to speak, of productivity is usually not well taken, because we are saying as much as an employer has an obligation to take care of its workers, the workers have an obligation to be productive, because without productivity, then one day we will come to a place where we have
allow me to
redundancies.
interrupt you. I think his bone of contention was the sincerity on the part of the employer in implementing what the government has set as law, which he says is not happening.
So, for example, the 15% that he talked about,
yes,
that was what we call, and to us we find, and when I say us, I'm saying to employers, it's a very tricky position. Before a government declaration on Labor Day has been gazetted and made into law, what is it? A declaration. Are we together? So when the government declared, and it was not a 15%, it was actually a 5%, and that was in 2017, we were waiting for that 5% increment to be gazetted so that employers can implement it. Because on what grounds would they be implementing it if not upon the law? So those are some of the technicalities that may not be appreciated, but they're real and they're existing.
Okay.
And let me also say this, please,
finally,
that with regard to wage determination, and this is something that FK has been very vocal about, in other economies that are very developed, wage determination is not done through a political process, where on Labor Day, for whatever pressures, it's to be declared that we are going to increase. It's usually governed by forces in the marketplace. So that when you have wage determinations declared through political platforms, it becomes very difficult to implement them, because they have not been determined because of productivity, for example, factors like productivity.
Okay.
They've not been determined by the forces in the market. They've not been declared through social dialogue where partners agree, like what we have in CBAs. And therefore, you can imagine an imposition of 18%. That was in 2016, 5% 2017. And you see, for workers, we'll always push for an increment in wage. But if this wage determination is not through social dialogue,
yes,
where you look at my balance sheet and you say indeed you have the ability to pay, how is that employer to pay?
I'll take
and
that
those are some
question
of
as
the
your last
technical
comment.
issues that are there in redundancies.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ndemo. I know you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
I want to begin with Dennis first, which is our biggest problem in this country, whereby he talked about they were making cakes, and very soon there were 10 people making cakes
in the bakery.
Yes.
Yes.
And nobody is there to tell them that when other people come to make cakes, go make chapatis. Because that is an innovation which would move you from competition. This country has got too many business people, but not too many entrepreneurs. And what the government has been doing is, since 1965, every 2 years, there's a new policy on SMEs, MSMEs, but people don't read them. So we don't lack policy in micro, small, and medium enterprises. We have a lot of policy. We have even SME authority. What has been lacking is advisory services to help people solve a problem like that. They should have actually taken him from there to do some other product. We see our farmers kill themselves on productivity, maize from Uganda. It is us. We are the biggest problem We have been chopping land into uneconomical pieces. 2 acres, 5 sons, you still want to subdivide 2 acres to every son. You are killing yourself. If you go to Uganda, Tanzania, the land is, they don't subdivide like we do. So they take advantage of economies of scale to feed us, because we have destroyed ourselves. If you go to Vihiga, Kakamega, Kisii, all those places, we are putting ourselves in the grave by chopping the lands.
Okay.
That's why productivity has gone way below. That we have been talking about it is dropping. We are going to have a problem with food security. But nobody has been listening because of our cultural practices.
A last word from you, Dr.
So the last
Demo.
one is
yes.
that...
And tell us, is there any hope? As you tell us also that there is no hope.
Mungu tu. But the last one I want to say...
Yes.
That everybody here is talking about government. Yeah? And that's our biggest problem. There are so many things we can do without government. But everybody is saying, what has government done? Nobody is saying, what have I done?
But like, government has the bulk of revenue to implement the things that these young people want.
There has been policy since 1965. Every 2 years there has been policy, to the extent that we have women fund, we have the youth fund. Nobody is talking about that here. That I went to the youth fund with this proposal and this did not happen the way I wanted it to happen. The problem is that we are not reading to understand those documents that come out there.
Okay,
so
Dr.
we've got to blame to some
Dr. Demo, I know there are those who'd object. We might have to, our time really is up. Shall I go ahead and give us your final perspective on this?
Yeah. Just to comment on wages and agree with Grace here from FKE, that is a big challenge. And I think one of the things we never think about is that wages also have a compound effect. Why do employees want higher wages? Because they want to cover expenses. We have to take our children to school, medicine, and buy food. But when you increase the wage of yourself, whether it's in the security sector, you also increase the wage of the guy who is making unga, of the guy who's making the pharmaceuticals, of the person who is making the educating your children. Everybody's wages goes up. So we've increased the cost and nobody's happy. Okay, so and that is a productivity question. So what we should be doing is, when we produce more, then we should be creating, that's when we can create more to take. What we say in like our business, and I think other businesses who are successful, they say we eat what we kill. So when we produce something, and I hope the companies, we see some companies, their profitability is growing, they can share that profit with their employees. But if the profitability is not growing and then you increase the costs, it just makes it more and more difficult. And I think you'll find even in the security sector, people start saying, if I had 2 guards now, I say, I think I'll survive with 1. Or the gardener now has to do it in the evening. Or now other people are taking shortcuts because he knows there's a market for people who are not paying the wage. Because it just becomes too expensive and it becomes a challenge. But in terms of something Prof has said about what government should be doing, I think we simultaneously want our government to do a lot more, but we also want them to do a lot less on some things. The best times we had in the recent past in our economy was during the NAC government. And what the NAC government, when they first came in, the first thing they did was withdraw government from doing too many things. You start saying we cut down our regulations. I think we had some 400 and something licenses that you needed to operate, and we cut them down significantly. The government side saying, let's privatize other aspects, let people do the work. So I think a lot of the time the government is giving us a sack to carry and run this race, which is the government. And like you mentioned about the resources, if government resources were focused on the key things, social services, education, medicine, roads, infrastructure, security, then even our taxes don't have to be so high. Because right now, we were talking about some of the examples we talked about, sugar companies, East African Portland. There's a lot of government companies which we are paying for. We are actually paying for to survive, but they are not really surviving. They are burning cash.
So that the model, the NAC model for you was something that was ideal then,
Yes.
and maybe it's something that we should consider.
Let open the road so that private sector can flourish.
Okay.
And do a bit less.
Dr. Awiti, you have the last word here. You are asked to be a prophet.
Okay.
And what does the future look like in terms of work?
So I have very bad news for you. I estimate that 50 to 70% of the jobs that exist today will not exist 10 years from now. And 50 to 70% of those new jobs don't exist today. So do the math. Now, just 5G connection is going to change our lifestyle, it's going to change the workplace, it's going to change leisure, it's going to change government in ways that we cannot imagine. The sanitation workers today, those guys who come to your homestays and your estates to pick garbage, will be technology workers. Why? Because that garbage can will have a chip that talks to the sanitation company and tells them when your garbage is of a certain weight, so they should come and pick it up. That's how it's going to be disruptive. The future workplace is going to be flat. There will be no bosses. It will not be hierarchical. It will be highly connected and highly collaborative. It will not be a knowledge economy anymore. It's not just what you know. It will be a conceptual economy where it is the people who analyze, who explain, who interpret things, not just those who regurgitate facts unthinkingly. You will not survive in that new economy. And that's why educators like myself have to reimagine education for that new economy.
Wow. I'm wondering where news anchors fit in all that. Thank you so much, Dr. Alex Awiti, for that perspective. We've had Mushai Kunyiha, Vice Chair, Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Thank you for joining us for this discussion. We have so many questions, but sadly our time is up. In addition, Dr. Alex Awiti, Vice Provost and the Interim Dean of the Graduate School of Media and Communications at the Aga Khan University. Asante sana, Daktari. We've also had Grace Kanyiri, Head of Legal and Industrial Relations, Federation of Kenyan Employers. And in addition, Dr. Bitange Ndemo, lecturer at the University of Nairobi, also former immediate chair, or should I just stick with chair? Blockchain.
Just a teacher at the university.
The other one, forget about it.
I'm here on.
You're here on teaching business, okay. And we had in the audience as well, Isaac Andabwa, Kotu, Executive Board Member, General Secretary, Kenya National Private Security Workers Union, and also Alphonse Were, a labor policy consultant, together with Kenyans from all walks of life who came to give their views on jobs, disruption, and the challenges that they face. Let me quickly read a tweet here before we wrap up the program. This is what some of you have to say online. Waidera Kim says, I make shoes large scale, and one thing is for shoes, Kenya does not have a conducive environment. I will tell you, the person talking about shoe manufacturing is not making sense to me. I cannot write everything here. Call me to the program. Okay, that's something that we need to do. Cyclone Kenneth says, I can see that your panelists have good ideas that can help our nation, but does our government have these ideas? How can these ideas be implemented? And one last person here, Kelvin Silva says, I got a business that works for me. I did plant operation as my career job, but I changed my way to online work. I'd like to tell the youth, if someone offers you an opportunity to work online, first try it to know about it. Don't just judge it. Thank you so much. Let's keep the conversation going. The hashtag is Monday Report, and 22422 is the SMS line. We have to finish the program right now. On behalf of myself and the whole team that's made this possible, the panelists and the audience, we say thank you. And for those who've asked where is Mashrima today, she took a break, but she'll be back next week. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.